Everyone, and welcome to my channel, and welcome to the end of Crime-Oween. In today's video, I wanted to share with you a case that I have been following ever since it happened, and I wanted to share it for two separate reasons. The first being that this is a case of trial by media. What happens when the public bases their opinions on opinion pieces done by news outlets rather than the evidence that is provided? The second reason that I really wanted to share this is because the victim has been forgotten in her own story. When you Google her name, you do get hits that come up, but not nearly as many as when you Google someone else's name that was involved in this case. In today's video, we are going to be discussing the case of Meredith Kercher. Meredith Susanna Kara Kercher, more commonly known to her family and friends as Mez, was born in South London on December 28th of 1985. She was the youngest of four children. Her parents, John and Arlene, had two sons, John Jr. and Lyle, as well as a daughter named Stephanie. And Meredith was described as being sociable and loving, and she really enjoyed athletics like dance, karate, and soccer. And she was also very studious. When she was 15 years old, she went on a class trip to Italy and fell in love with the country. So much so that when she would go on to attend the University of Leeds, she studied both European politics and Italian. After graduation, she planned on either working for the European Union or as a journalist, but while she was at university, she was given the opportunity to go back to the country that she had fallen in love with. University of Leeds, like so many different colleges, offered an exchange program, and Meredith very quickly signed up. She took on 3 separate jobs so she could afford her year abroad, and she even settled on what city she would be studying in. She chose Perugia because it was a college town, and she also felt safer there than she did in bigger cities like Rome or Milan. She could also return home to London quite easily from Perugia. On September 1st of 2007, 21-year-old Meredith Kercher set off for her Italian adventure. Her sister Stephanie said that she was kind of sad about leaving her family, but she was also very excited about returning to Italy and making new friends. Shortly after arriving in Italy, she found a place to stay at the Via della Pergola 7. Now, Meredith would live on the top floor with 3 women, while 4 men occupied the bottom floor of this cottage. Her roommates were 2 young Italian trainee lawyers called Filomena Romanelli and Laura Mazzetti. And she was also living with another exchange student like herself. But this exchange student came all the way from the United States, and her name was Amanda Knox. Amanda Knox was from Seattle, Washington, and like Meredith, she too had visited Italy when she was 15 years old. This time it was on a family trip, but the outcome was the same. She fell in love with the country. So while Meredith was a little more on the reserved side, Amanda had a very large personality. She described herself as a quirky girl. Now, Amanda was studying linguistics at the University of Washington, and in 2007, she made the dean's list while working 3 part-time jobs to support her Italian adventure just like Meredith. Shortly after arriving in Italy, Amanda found a job as a waitress at the Le Chic bar. Now, this bar was owned by a man called Patrick Lumumba. Patrick was a musician from the Congo, and he hired Amanda because he thought that she would help bring in a new crowd. Overall, Patrick said he didn't have any problems with Amanda as an employee. Sometimes, like so many of us, she would kind of lose focus during her shift, but he would quickly remind her of the task at hand, and she would get right to it. During this time, there were rumors that tensions between Amanda and Meredith were rising. Meredith's roommates and friends said that the two would argue over Amanda's casual attitude toward sex, toward household chores, and even money. Amanda herself denied that this ever happened. She said that even though they had just met, the two got on quite well. They would run errands together, like go to the post office or go grocery shopping, and Amanda would even confide in Meredith. Amanda claimed that Meredith was not the type of person who would just let tension simmer. If there was a problem she had, she would go directly to you and work it out right then and there. I personally believe that if there were tensions between the two of them, this wasn't anything unusual. They are two young women from two different countries and backgrounds, and they're learning how to live together. And apparently the tensions were not so bad because on October 25th of 2007, Amanda and Meredith attended a classical music concert together. Now, it was here that Amanda would meet a 23-year-old Italian man who was in Perugia to study computer technology, and his name was Raffaele Sollecito. Raffaele was described as being intelligent and sensitive, and right away Amanda was drawn to him because he looked like Harry Potter. On November 1st of 2007, many people in Perugia were taking advantage of the long holiday weekend. Both Philomena and Laura were spending time with their boyfriends outside of the flat, and the four men downstairs had actually returned home to celebrate the weekend. Amanda herself was supposed to work that night, but she had received a text from her boss, Patrick Lumumba, that said she didn't have to come in because they were slow. So she responded, "Okay, great, see you later," before heading over to Raffaele's for dinner and a movie. Meredith opted for a calmer night that night. On October 31st, she'd actually gone out to the Merlin bar to celebrate Halloween, so on November 1st, she wanted to just relax and take it easy. Now, she headed over to the flat of some English friends of hers for pizza and a movie, and around 9 p.m., her friend Sophie would actually walk her back to Via della Pergola 7. What happened next would begin an 8-year media circus that would polarize public opinions and leave an innocent victim forgotten in her own story. 9 a.m. on November 2nd, a nearby neighbor found 2 cell phones in her garden, and she phoned the postal police. Italy's postal police are responsible for crimes involving computers and cell phones, so they headed over to her home to gather these phones before beginning to work out whose they were and why they were just left in this garden. So around 10 a.m. on November 2nd, Amanda and Raffaele woke up. Now, apparently the night before, Raffaele had had a leak of some sort in his apartment and he did not own a mop. So Amanda said, "Hey, I'm going to go to the flat today. I want to take a shower and maybe grab a clean pair of clothes, so I'll grab the mop while I'm there." The two had planned on going on a sightseeing tour later that day. So as Amanda approaches the flat, she notices that the door is open, but this really didn't cause her any alarm. Apparently, the front door was rather tricky and you had to have a key to be able to lock it properly without it popping back open. So she just thought, one of the girls is home now. They just stepped out really quickly. No big deal. When Amanda entered the bathroom, she noticed that there were a few blood drops in the sink along with a faint bloody footprint on the bathroom mat. And she really just didn't think anything of this either. So she took her shower and then realized that the hairdryer was in the other bathroom. When Amanda entered the second bathroom to grab the hairdryer, she realized that there was feces in the toilet. Someone did not flush, and in a house of 4 women, this was very unusual. Now, it was here that Amanda became very concerned. She said that she'd grabbed the mop that she was going to take to Raffaele's and was brandishing it about like a weapon as she kind of did a cursory search of the apartment. And she noticed that Meredith's bedroom door was unlocked. Now, this was unusual. Meredith didn't usually lock her door, so Amanda quickly returns to Raffaele's and asks him if he will return with her to the cottage. So as the two were approaching Amanda and Meredith's place, they noticed that Philomena's window had been broken. Now, Amanda had tried calling Meredith, but she did not get a response, so Raffaele decides that he is going to try and kick the door to Meredith's room down. When his attempts were unsuccessful, he decided to stop because he didn't want to get into trouble for trespassing. So instead, he calls the Carabinieri, which is Italy's military police force. At this point, 2 separate police forces have been called, the postal police by the neighbor as well as the Carabinieri by Raffaele. Now, Raffaele had actually made a statement on the phone describing what was going on, saying they were worried about Meredith, but the postal police was the first department on the scene. And there was some confusion because Raffaele thought, hey, here's the Carabinieri, and the postal police who had tracked down where the phones belonged were like, we're just here to deliver these phones. So they tracked these phones down through Philomena. Philomena was registered on one of them that she had given Meredith to use while she was in Italy. And surprise, surprise, the postal police weren't really comfortable with breaking down the door either. However, the Carabinieri was not very far behind, and when they got there, they asked Amanda and Raffaele to wait outside while they forced Meredith's bedroom door open. Inside the room, the police made a grisly discovery. On the floor of her bedroom, covered by a duvet, was the bloodied body of Meredith Kercher, and she was the victim of a brutal murder. Meredith had been stabbed in the throat, sexually assaulted, and then left partially nude on the floor of her room. And there was also blood all over, including on the walls. So at this point, Amanda and Raffaele are waiting outside like they were told to do. And the police started to notice some odd behavior. They said that Amanda and Raffaele were kissing and cuddling, and it looked like they didn't have a care in the world. However, the two didn't know what was going on inside the apartment. All they knew was that Meredith's bedroom door was locked and they couldn't reach her. So Amanda said that Raffaele was attempting to comfort her because he could sense her unease. But as soon as the police saw what they were doing, their minds were pretty much made up. And this moment would come back to haunt both Amanda and Raffaele. Around 2 p.m. on November 2nd, Italian prosecutor Giuliano Magnini would arrive at the scene, and almost instantly, he and the police had constructed their own narrative on what they believed happened the previous night. They claimed that the scene had been staged. There was glass on the floor in Filomena's bedroom on top of clothing that was scattered about. However, there's no definitive proof that Filomena did not throw the clothes about the bedroom herself. Maybe she was in a rush to go spend time with her boyfriend and had left the house a few days previously. In that instance, yes, the glass would be on top of the clothes. They also stated that whoever tried to stage the scene didn't do a very good job because there was a laptop, a wallet, and a camera left in plain sight. They also claimed that the rock that was used to break Filomena's window would have been too heavy for someone to throw standing on the ground floor. So while the police were busy collecting their evidence, the girls were told that they had to leave the apartment. They could not go back in and retrieve anything. They just had to go because it was now an active crime scene. And at this point, they had no idea how long they would be denied access to the flat. So on November 3rd, Amanda and Raffaele go into town because Amanda needed some underwear. A witness reported that Amanda had gone to a lingerie store where she was overheard talking to Raffaele about wild sex. However, this was not the case at all. Amanda and Raffaele had actually gone to a store very similar to Target in the United States. So a store that kind of has a little bit of everything. And while she was buying underwear, there's no way that the witness could have known what she was talking about because she was speaking in English and the witness spoke none. A few days after Meredith was brutally murdered, there would be a candlelight vigil, and it was widely reported that Amanda and Raffaele did not attend this vigil and instead opted to have dinner with some friends. Now, this didn't come off in the best light, but the media didn't report the full story. You see, Meredith's English friends, as well as her roommates, Filomena and Laura, didn't attend this vigil either. And while Amanda and Raffaele did go to a friend's house for dinner that night, it was on their way back to the police station to be questioned more by the police. Throughout the course of 4 days, police gathered over 400 pieces of evidence. Now, one of these pieces of evidence was Meredith's bra, the bra she was wearing when she was attacked. However, it was missing its clasp, but instead of trying to find the clasp while they were searching the apartment, police just kind of shrugged their shoulders and moved on, but this would come back to haunt them. So around this time, people that knew Amanda were coming forward saying that she was exhibiting odd behavior and saying weird things. One person had made the comment, "I hope Meredith didn't suffer," to which Amanda responded, "Of course she suffered. She had her throat cut." While many saw this as a callous comment, it could have been Amanda just speaking the truth and not sugarcoating the situation. November 5th, Raffaele got called to the station for more questioning, and Amanda decided to go with him. And it was here that people in the waiting room saw her doing yoga and cartwheels. And while this may have looked like odd behavior, she had been there a very long time, and she admitted that she was doing yoga to try and loosen her muscles. But at this point, people were already determined to see the worst in Amanda. You see, the police, after they examined the crime scene had come to the conclusion that one person could not have committed this crime on their own, and they were convinced that Amanda and Raffaele had something to do with Meredith's death. So the podcast Real Crime Profile actually made an excellent point. They said that the police jumped to a conclusion because there is no definitive proof that more than one person committed this crime. On their podcast, they stated that we all know the feeling of being cut, and this would have given a perpetrator an excellent source of control over their victim as compared to a gun. You know, not a lot of people know what it feels like to be shot, but we all know the feeling of being cut, so it would make a victim easier to control. And I'm in no means calling Meredith compliant because we know that she fought for her life, but it would have been possible for one person to carry out this attack. While Raffaele is being questioned, the police decide that they're going to question Amanda as a witness, and she gives her account of that night. She states that she got the text from Patrick Lumumba saying she didn't have to work, so she went over to Raffaele's to make dinner. They watched Amelie. They made love and smoked a joint before going to bed, and then she would wake up at 10 a.m. the following day and head over to the flat. However, during her questioning, Amanda said that the police became rapidly aggressive to the point where they were even hitting her on the back of the head, calling her a liar and telling her that she was going to jail for a really, really long time. You see, there'd been an eyewitness that had come forward stating that they had seen a black male leave the flat that night. And as soon as they heard about the text exchange between Amanda and Patrick Lumumba, that was it. They had their case. They claimed that when Amanda responded, "Okay, great, see you later," it was a literal plan to meet later. Amanda tried explaining this. You know, she said, "Hey, it's not a literal phrase where I come from," but the police were telling her, no, you have to remember, you're lying to us, remember. At some point during this questioning, she asked if she should have an attorney present, but they responded, "No, it will only look worse if you do." Around 1:45 in the morning on November 6th, Amanda broke. She described to police what she said could have happened in like a vision or a dream-like trance. And she said that Patrick had expressed an interest in Meredith, so she had taken him over to the apartment that evening where she would be in the kitchen and Patrick would go and confront Meredith. And while he was murdering her, Amanda was in the kitchen with her hands over her ears. Shortly after this, Amanda Knox, Raffaele Sollecito, and Patrick Lumumba were all arrested for the murder of Meredith Kercher. And before she was taken to prison, Amanda wrote police a letter telling them what happened in the interrogation room. She said, quote, "This is very strange, I know, but really what happened is as confusing to me as it is to everyone else. I have been told there is hard evidence saying that I was at the place of the murder of my friend when it happened. This, I want to confirm, is something that to me, if asked a few days ago, would be impossible. In regards to this confession that I made last night, I want to make clear that I'm very doubtful of the verity of my statements, because they were made under the pressures of stress, shock, and extreme exhaustion. Not only was I told I would be arrested and put in jail for 30 years, but I was also hit in the head when I didn't remember a fact correctly." Shortly after the three were arrested, the police went on to hold a press conference where they stated that they had more than enough evidence to convict Amanda, Raffaele, and Patrick in Meredith's murder, and they confidently stood up there and said, "Case closed." Now, while she was in prison, Amanda was given an STD test, and she was told that she actually had HIV. So she listed her feelings about this in her private diary that would eventually get leaked to the public, and because of this, she was viciously slut-shamed, only for it all to turn out that she actually didn't have HIV. So all of this, Amanda's interrogation, the arrest of Amanda, Raffaele, and Patrick, the police proudly standing there stating the case was closed, was done before the evidence was properly examined. When police examined the evidence, they discovered DNA from a fourth person, a man named Rudy Gaudet. Police had Rudy's fingerprints on file because he was initially from the Ivory Coast, and when he immigrated to Italy, he had to give his fingerprints, and at the scene, they had found his thumbprint on the pillow underneath Meredith's body. Investigators would go over to Rudy's apartment and gather his toothbrush to compare against the DNA evidence found at the scene. Rudy's DNA also matched DNA found on Meredith's purse, on her bra, on her sweatshirt, inside her body, as well as the feces inside the toilet. November 20th of 2007, an international arrest warrant was issued for Rudy Guede. Now, he was arrested in Germany before being extradited back to Italy to face charges. During this time, a patron of the Le Chic bar came forward, giving Patrick Lumumba an ironclad alibi. So 2 weeks after he was arrested, he was released. 20-year-old Rudy Guede actually had a history of burglary. Just 2 weeks before the murder of Meredith Kercher, he had been released from a prison in Milan where he had served burglary charges. A week before the murder, he had broken into a nursery school and he was detained by the owner and 2 maintenance workers there. When police arrived at the nursery school, they searched his backpack and found a laptop and a cell phone that had actually been reported stolen from a law office in Perugia. The break-in at the law office looked eerily similar to the break-in at Via della Pergola 7. A rock had been used to break an elevated window to gain entry. Rudy had actually met Amanda and Meredith while he was playing basketball with the men who lived downstairs, and he threw a little bit of a hiccup in the prosecution's case. You see, they had planned everything out. They knew what they were going to say. They knew the evidence that they were going to show to ensure their guilty verdict. However, Patrick Lumumba was released from prison. Instead of examining the evidence and letting the evidence tell them the story of what happened, they decided that they were going to substitute Patrick Lumumba for Rudy Guede and not really change anything else in their story. So as the police were working on their case and the 3 suspects were sitting in jail, the media got to work, trying Amanda in the court of public opinion, and anything they could find was on the table, including a childhood nickname that she had earned on the soccer field, Foxy Knoxy. Amanda posted this nickname on her MySpace page, and immediately this made her guilty of being a whore. And while Amanda is being slandered in the media, Meredith is barely being mentioned at all. 46 days after initially entering Via del Pergola 7, the police returned, and it was on this trip that they found the missing bra clasp. They also recorded this trip, and it was through these recordings that we could see exactly how the police were contaminating the crime scene. They were walking through blood, kicking things with their booties. They weren't changing their booties or their gloves, and this is crime scene 101. You want the least amount of contamination as possible. That means changing your booties frequently. That means changing your gloves after you touch anything. If you touch a door handle, change your gloves. And then if you touch something after that, you change your gloves again. That means using a different pair of tweezers for everything that is collected. DNA testing has become so advanced that they can pick up on the most microscopic sample. And that means that if you are not following proper procedures, chances are high that your evidence is going to be contaminated. Police found the bra clasp under a bit of rug. They'd rolled it back and there the bra clasp was. And they picked it up, they handed it off to someone else, who handed it off to someone else, before they threw it back down on the ground, not even in the same spot, and took the photo, like they just discovered it right there. When this bra clasp was tested, they found Raffaele Sollecito's DNA on it. However, because they weren't following the procedure and changing their gloves like they should have been, this could have easily come from the door handle. Remember, Raffaele tried to get into Meredith's room that day, leaving his DNA behind on the door. And when the police entered this room, they could have taken his DNA on their glove from the door to the bra clasp. This was the only evidence they had putting Raffaele in Meredith's room. In terms of Amanda Knox being in that bedroom, there was no evidence. I just want to say it again for the people in the back. There was no evidence that she was in Meredith's bedroom. Meredith's funeral would be held on December 14th of 2007 in Croydon, London, and there would be over 300 people in attendance. There were numerous colorful floral tributes to her, and photographs of her were placed all over her casket. And while it was a somber occasion, there was still laughter involved. People wanted to remember Meredith for who she was, rather than what happened to her. Amanda, Raffaele, and Rudy would all sit in prison for almost a year before they would be charged with the murder of Meredith Kercher. That's where we're going to end part 1 of this video. Join me back here tomorrow for part 2, where we are going to be discussing the trial. And if you think you know how it's going to end, you're probably wrong. Be prepared for one crazy, crazy ride. As always, I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video today. And if you liked it, please let me know by giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to my channel if you have not done so already, and leave your thoughts on this case or any cases you want me to cover down in the comments below, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye!